It's chock full with information, but it's also meaningful, I think, for just everyday knowledge for all of us to have. And it relates to warranty. It relates to consumer protection, which is, I don't think, nearly as important as warranty, but also product liability. But what is a warranty? In a nutshell, warranty is an assurance that goods or services will live up to certain factual expectations. Or it can be promised, but it can also be implied. What do I mean by promise? It's an overt assurance that the goods or services will perform as promised. So if I buy a car and they say that the engine and the drivetrain is guaranteed to be defect-free for 100,000 miles, that's an express warranty. So if it doesn't, the drivetrain breaks down or the engine breaks down during that period of time, they either have to repair, replace, or pay the difference in the value of the property as a result. It's very straightforward what an express warranty is. It expressly states what will be covered and what won't be. That's not so much what the chapter is about, express warranties. It's much more about implied warranties, which I'll get to in a second. But one thing we have to distinguish between express, overt promises about goods or services living up to a certain measurable expectation, as opposed to seller's opinion. You get sellers say things all the time, this vehicle is going to make you very happy. This vehicle is going to last for decades. This vehicle is a cream puff. It's loaded. This car or this home is in the greatest school district ever. You know, these things, although there could be some arguments that there are benchmarks by which one can argue that's either true or false, we know when a seller says things like that, that's just mere sales talk or puffery, and you can't sue for a seller's opinion unless you can prove the seller's actually lying about that opinion. Very difficult to do, but if they're lying about the opinion, it is in fact a type of fraud to induce you to do something. So we're distinguishing overt promises of factual expectation versus mere seller's opinion. That's very important. And the chapter all of a sudden talks about, well, what's a defective good? A defective good is one that doesn't perform as either overtly promised or implicitly promised. Those are implied warranties, which we'll get to in a second. So if I bought a blender and it says it's guaranteed to work for 3 years from the date of purchase, and I have it for a year, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the motor seizes up, well, that's the breach of the express warranty, and I could either get a new blender or get that blender repaired. Many times they reserve the right to do repair, and the law implies that if it's not specific, that they have a right to repair. Full or limited warranties. The book is very clear on that. I'm not going to spend much time on it because otherwise this would go on forever. But all sellers give certain implied warranties, and that's what we're going to spend the bulk of this little review about, is the implied warranties are the ones that are unspoken, but the law is going to place them in play unless the parties specifically waive them. And so what's the first one? Is the implied warranty of title. It's kind of common sense, but it might surprise you when it comes up. Say I buy, I always use bicycles because that's all I can think of off the top of my head. I buy a bicycle, a really nice used racing road bike that's for triathlons or something like that. It was $2,000 used, but I picked it up at a flea market for $500. The seller says, yeah, I bought that once from an estate sale or something like that. And it seems like it's really nice. And I look it over and I know a little bit about bicycles, say, for example, and I say, yeah, it really is a nice bike. It's got some dust and kind of, it looks like it's been put on a shelf for a while and maybe some surface rust. But I said, boy, I can really clean this up. It's a great bike. I'm going to buy it. So I buy it for $500. And now I'm at a bike race or something years down the road, and someone looks at the bike and says, geez, that looks like my old Fuji or my old Bianca or whatever it is. And they look at it and say, it looks identical to it. And he goes, in fact, there's my name etched on the bottom of it with the serial number that I have somehow recorded somewhere. Could they get the bike back from me? Yes, they could. Why? Because I never got valid title. It was obviously stolen from this person. They never validly transferred title to the seller that I got it from. And I can't even get my money back from the true owner. The true owner gets to get the bike as long as they can establish it was theirs and they never voluntarily transferred title. The only exception to that, which we talked about before, is estoppel. They somehow made somebody else look like the true owner, and that was the person that transferred title. Or they gave it to, say, a bike shop that does not only repairs, but they sell new and used bicycles, and that would be called a sale by a trustee. That's important for the test. That's, I think, currently up on Blackboard. Other than that, so now I have this bike. The true owner comes forward. They demand it. They say we have to go through a little lawsuit, and they prove it in court. They convince the judge or the jury that, in fact, they're the true owner of the vehicle. I'm not a criminal in any way, shape, or form, but I don't get to retain the bicycle. What are my rights now? I get to sue the seller for what? Breach of warranty of title. Every seller of every good, new, used, regular merchant, casual seller, everybody's warrant, they have the right to possess. the right to transfer title, and they are either the true owner or have consent from the true owner to pass title to you, like a consignment sale or something like that. So everybody does warranty of title. Warranty, everyone does also warranty against encumbrances unless they make it perfectly clear that it's not true. So say I'm buying a car. This happened one time. I was buying a car once. It was used. It wasn't very old though. I was kind of excited about it. It was a pretty good price. And then all of a sudden the seller was honest about it, and they told me as we're getting close to sort of drawing up a mutual meeting of the minds, if you will, they said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to have to pay off the $5,000 I still owe the bank on the loan for the car." I'm like, oh, geez. By telling me that, they're basically telling me they want to sell it subject to the lien, or they need to clean up the lien prior to sale. Either way, that's a type of encumbrance. Now, he told me about it, so it wasn't an issue. Well, it was an issue. It made me walk away from it because I knew it was going to take a while to clean up title. I didn't want anything to do with it. But listen to this. Like, what if they were silent? That car is easy because when you go to get the car, you're going to have a tough time getting the title document in order to register and things like that. Let's assume it's not a car. Let's assume it's, I'll give you the example I was going to talk about earlier with regard to a pizza shop somebody I knew had bought. They bought all the fixtures with it, the ovens that were in the shop and some instruments, the utility appliances and things that were used in the shop. And he was actually approached, like, I don't know, maybe a year into owning it, and somebody from some oven manufacturing company came in and says, we don't want to have to repossess these ovens, but there's still several $1,000s owed on them. And the guy I knew, I had nothing to do with the sale, but he called me up after the fact and said, hey, these guys are coming in, they're saying they're going to seize these ovens from me. They say they have a lien on them, that they sold it to the previous owner on credit, and there's still so much owed on it. And it turned out to be true. So all we had to do, I should say all we had to do, we contacted the previous seller, and they said it was a mere oversight, and they made good on it. They paid off the encumbrance on that property because they had to, because when they sold those ovens to my buddy, they were selling those ovens implicitly, meaning that nothing was said, but it's implicit. The law imposes this obligation that it has to be sold with encumbrances. And if they breach it, they can be sued for damages. A warranty of conformity to description, model, or sample. This is true. Like if you ever seen somebody demonstrate something and you look at the model example, or you take out a test drive of a car and it's really fantastic and you're crazy about it, but you don't actually get to buy that one. You get to buy another one from their inventory or get it delivered later on. What should be delivered to you? Exactly the quality, the consistency that was given to you in the model or sample. I thought about this one time. I remember there was these little kiosk things in the old malls back in the day, and there'd be some guy there demonstrating like a flying little like helicopter thing, and it was quite interesting how they moved around, and they were pretty cheap. And I've got a ton of kids, so I always want to, get extra gifts for them around the holidays, and I'm panicking because I always go shopping at Christmas Eve, and I see the thing and I say, that looks great, and then I'm skeptical that the thing that's in the box is going to work as well as the one they're demonstrating. And I was in a weird mood one time, and I always remember this, where the guy was saying, okay, $19. I'm like, great. I said, but I want that one. I want the one you're using. And he actually kind of used language. He goes, no, but this is the sample. All of the ones we sell are identical to the sample. Would it have to be? Yes, it would. Because it's common sense. If you're demonstrating with one thing, the thing that's actually given to you has to be consistent with the one that's demonstrated or shown. But I was very skeptical because I know when I go back to the mall, these kiosks that seem to all open up before the holidays tend to be all gone in the middle of January, and then you can't find them or return them, and I'm not good at returning things anyways. So that's the warranty, that something has to live up to the conformity of the description. It's described as a certain way. Hey, they said it was going to come with a leather case. It turns out this is a plastic case. That breaches the warranty of description. And related to that is sample. They give you a sample of something. What must the whole come as? Consistent with the sample. And the other is the model, where I was saying the guy was demonstrating a model one. The actual unit that I buy has to be consistent with the model. Think about that with clothing. One time when I worked for a law firm, I worked with a gentleman that was really into suits, and I remember he took me to something called a trunk show. I never heard of such a thing. We literally went in there, and they bring out swaths of material, like different kinds of like wool blends and things, and you get to put it on your arm and you get to touch it, and you like the feel, you like the way it kind of hangs on you. You say, yeah, make me a suit out of that. Well, what should the suit be made out of? Exactly the same texture, quality, and consistency and ingredients of the swath of cloth that they gave me. kind of a nice print. I mean, I don't think there's too many breaches of that going on, but you can imagine yourself, you feel a certain material on a little chunk of carpet or on that this is what your couch is going to be made out of, and then you order it and it comes and the couch is made out of something completely foreign to what you actually were shown by way of sample. Pretty shocking, and you have a right to sue the implicit warranty that it has to comply with sample, model, or description. Now, this is a tough one, and this is true of all sellers, whether they're casual or merchants. And this is a tough one a lot of people get screwed up on. Warranty of fitness for particular purpose. And I think about this when my dad was a plumber, and I was going to be a plumber, and my grandfather was a plumber, and I was learning how to weld a little bit. There's different kinds of things you do with welding torches. Sometimes you just do soldering, which all you need is just hopefully glasses. But then there's other kinds of welding, like arc welding and bead welding, where it gets really bright, and you also have some kind of safety glasses to protect your eyes from the brilliance of the light giving off. And I remember going down to the plumbing supply house because I was learning how to weld. My father had these like antique things that he used that he didn't care as much about his physical health the way I did. I was a bit of a nerd and always wanted to take all the safety precautions. And I remember going down there and I'm looking, there's all kinds of goggles down there. Goggles just to protect you from, debris and stuff. There's other goggles that protect you from the light. There's some goggles that protect you from, actual sparks that give up. There's all kinds of grades of different goggles. And I went in there and I didn't know what I needed. And so I told the store, goes, hey, I'm not much of a welder. I'm just starting to learn how to weld in different forms of welding. I want goggles that are going to protect my eyes, not only from flying debris, but also from the brightness of light and maybe even from the poisonous gas that might be given up in certain circumstances. And the seller goes, oh, these are the goggles you need. And he picks out a set of goggles and he gives them to me boxes. This is what you want for arc welding. Now, what if I went back and used those goggles and they weren't fit for arc welding? They were fit for swimming and for keeping my eyes moist while I ride my motorcycle. They breached the warranty for a particular purpose. I told them what I needed it for. They knew I was relying upon their judgment. They were experts in that area, and I was a complete novice. That is a very narrow type of a warranty, but it's very important. I know I used to paint for a living, and there's a time when you're new and you're kind of a rookie. And I remember going we used to go to a specific Sherwin-Williams store, and they were experts, and I would go in, and sometimes we would be painting something new and novel. We're painting this masonite type of siding in a house, and we went in there and we said, hey, we're looking for a type of a primer that would be excellent for masonite, and it's going to be able to be painted or applied during 40-degree weather, and we're looking for something for a good moisture bond and barrier because we didn't know. And the seller said, this is what you need. What if it turns out that the paint they gave us, because they knew they were relying on their judgment, we did in fact tell them we were going to rely on their judgment. We asked for their judgment. They picked out the product. Now the product has to do what? It has to perform as expected based upon their statements or their promotion. And so say we used it and it turns out it all peels off the next day, and somebody comes and looks at the paint can and says, hey guys, you're using an interior latex paint that's only good for certain kinds of temperate environments. This is not good for exterior paint at all. The wrong paint. Could we return it and get our money back? Maybe even sue for damages for the time we spent applying and then maybe removing the wrong application. Absolutely. It's not fit for the purpose for which it was intended. The seller being the expert, the consumer being uninformed and unknowledgeable about it would not be able to be expected not to have to rely on that. And so therefore they should be able to sue. Fitness for particular purpose. Now careful, that's different. Now I'm thinking about my father now when I was a kid. We used to always use the steak knives in our house. You guys don't remember this because you all have cable television now, but when I was a kid, we had like rabbit ears and like a little antenna thing that sometimes you had to change in the back of the TV to get better reception, whether you're looking at UHF or VHF. Don't worry about it. It was different sets of channels you had on your TV. We only got 3, but one of them was on VHF. The other 2 are on UHF. So sometimes we change our little antenna back and forth. And my brother and I and my sister, we never went and looked for screwdrivers like you're supposed to use. We always use steak knives, to my father's great chagrin. Now, what if we're using the steak knife and it bends at the end and is broken? Can we say, hey, this isn't fit for the tents? No, when they sold us the steak knife, they never made any promise to us that it was going to be able to be used to screw in screws on the back of the TV. They never relied upon our ignorance, nor did they ever profess their expertise in order for us to rely on it. Fitness for particular purpose is pretty rare. Going back to another quick example, I know I'm making this a bit long, but it's an important concept. My buddy, the painter again, I was a lawyer at the time. Now we stayed friends for all these years afterwards, and he was elderly, but he still painted a little bit near the end. And he was painting my law office. I bought the building, and he was painting upstairs. And one of my favorite stories was I had sanded the beautiful old floors. It was built in 1860, and it had old hardwood floors down there. Beautiful design, but it was really rough. So I sanded them all. They're all raw now. He's going to paint the walls for me, and he's going to do a great job because he was a great painter. Stanley was a little short, but he didn't want to use the ladder all the time, so he stood on one of the cans one day. And I was at court. I came back from court at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. All I can hear him is swearing in Polish, and he's ranting and raving, and it's usually not like him. He's just a pretty calm guy. I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on? I come up the stairs, and there's this green paint all over those hardwood floors, absorbing that green paint. Although he had a drop cloth, it just went everywhere. It went beyond the drop cloth. And he's swearing and yelling, and I said, what happened? Did you fall off the ladder or what? And he goes, no, I was stepping on the can just to get to this one spot I couldn't quite reach, and the can imploded and collapsed. And I always remember him saying, the can wasn't fit for the purpose for which it was intended. And I said, no, you never went into the paint store and said, I need a can of paint that not only holds paint, but also will support me while I'm up painting. And secondly, it's completely waived because on the can, guess what it has? It has a picture of somebody standing on it with one of those circles around and a line through it, like don't stand on the can paint. And there's warnings all over. It's not fit for that purpose. And so it clearly would not be fit for that intended purpose. But what if I did go in and say, I'm looking for a certain object and I want it to be able to be used for this thing, and I don't know, and you salesperson do, or you're professing to be an expert in that area. Now it has to be fit for that purpose, or you can sue over that warranty. It's a very important warranty. I put a test question on it. Now, careful, if I go in to buy a washing machine, do I really think the salesperson of a washing machine knows about like real technical data about the washing machine more than I do? Let's say I go into Home Depot and I'm looking around. I say, I'm looking for a washing machine. I got a big family. I want something that's kind of nice. And the guy says, this is a great washer. It's going to get your clothes more. They're going to come out newer than when they were new. Is that a warranty of fitness for a particular purpose? Now say my clothes come out and goes, hey, they don't seem newer than they were new. Do I have a breach of warranty? A lot of you are going to think yes. No, because that's mere sales talk. We don't really expect them to live. And was I really relying upon their expertise? I might have been in terms of the load, like will it hold, very large loads of wash? But that wasn't what I was asking about. I was working for one that worked well. That's not measurable. And as long as it works in a reasonable fashion, it does not breach the warranty of fitness for a particular purpose because it doesn't relate enough to specificity that I had such ignorance and they had such knowledge that it really induced me to make the sale. There's a fine line, I know, but so you get hung up on that one. Next one, these are about merchants. There's no infringement. That's not going to come up too much, but I used to show a movie in my live class because of copyright issues, and I don't know where to find it anywhere on the internet because I used to have an old VHS tape. It was pretty good. There was somebody making copy machines on the Xanax machine in their big office, and they had 20 Xanax machines in this fairly large company. And one day they get a letter from Xerox saying the Xanax Corporation stole or somehow is using our patent process in their copy machines, and this is a cease and desist order. You have to stop using those Xanax copiers because it's violating our patent rights. If it's true, they might actually have that right to do that to you. I don't know how they're going to come and enforce it in your private company, but say they did. But we bought these legitimately from the Xanax company. What could we do? We could sue Xanax for breaching the warranty against infringement, meaning that they're using a technological process that's protected under intellectual property rules like copyright or patent or something like that. And now we have a right to sue because when you buy goods, you expect no one being able to stop you because it impinges upon some intellectual property interest. It's not going to come up too much, but you should know it. And now the big one. This is the huge one that merchants all give. And it's in fact, they put it in their name. I hate the name because it throws people off. It's called the warranty of merchantability. Merchantability means that the product is going to function as it should. This is the biggest implied one. Why? Because you buy something and it should do what? It should work reasonably well for what it was intended to do. If I buy this phone, it should be able to make phone calls. It should be able to receive phone calls. And if it says it can text, it should be able to text, provided I'm in a range where I have some kind of connection to cell towers or something like that. And they would probably put that specifically in their contract. This is provided, it'll do these functions within certain ranges. Now, what if I bought it and it didn't work at all? It just never turned on. It was, it had some kind of flaw to it. what's my lawsuit going to be about? Let's assume there was no promise overtly of the lifespan or the work of the abilities of this phone to function in a way. You buy a phone, you expect it to make phone calls and receive phone calls. It's not doing that at all. So it's breached the warranty of merchantability, or what I like to call fitness for general purpose use for which it was intended. Kind of awkward there, but it's in your book. It's warranty of normal use. It should work as, I buy this cup. My wife bought me this cup. I think I mentioned it before. What does it say? It says, home is where your dog is. My dog's right next to me. Dog is right where I am. If this cup, it's been a week old, what if I haven't done anything usual to it? I haven't used it in the microwave. I haven't washed it in specifically hot water. I've been very tender with it. And what if the handle just fell off today? It's only been a week since I've had it. Did that breach the warranty for normal use? Probably. But what if I had it for 5 years? I wasn't beaten on it for 5 years, but I was using it pretty regular for 5 years, and the handle fell off. It's probably too long, and that's a factual determination a judge or a jury has to make. How long should a product last? We know it'll last as long as its overt promise, 100,000 miles, 5 years. If it says that overtly, well, then you don't have any guesswork. But generally speaking, other products have to do what? They have to work, survive, and function for a reasonable period of time. And what that is very difficult to determine. Normal use. Sale or food or drink. A lot of students like to spend time on this for a long time in class because it's kind of fun. But generally, food needs to be edible and drink needs to be safe or potable to consume. Now, a lot of people like to talk about the foreign substance in food. Now, be careful on this one. Believe it or not, it's not a breach of warranty if you order a fish sandwich and you might get one of those little fish bones in it, or you're getting fried clams and there's a little bit of shell or something in there, because that's called part of the natural expectation. Now, careful, they may have made an express warranty though. Boneless fillet of fish. Now it's overtly saying there's no bones in it. Now, if you get a bone and you choke or something like that, they breached the warranty. I actually did have a case many, many years ago against Burger King. I don't know how legitimate the case was at the time, but this woman bit into a chicken sandwich and it had a really large bone in it. Well, it looked like a dinosaur bone. I saw it. I said, I don't know how you didn't see it sticking out of the sandwich, but they tried to argue initially at Burger King that there was no warranty that the chicken sandwich was boneless, and chickens have bones, and so therefore it would be a natural occurrence to find bits and pieces of bone. They were completely avoiding the argument related to the fact that the bone was huge. But more importantly, what did I do? I went and got the menu and I went and took pictures of the thing, and guess what it says? Boneless breast of chicken. So it was an overt warranty that they were allegedly breaching. I left that law firm before that case resolved, so I don't know what happened with it. But you can see this. But think about food. I've had a few occasions. I had one time I've had foreign objects in food that we sued over. A lot of people think there's a lot of damages there, but if you don't really suffer any injury, all you're really out is the food price. And somebody say, what about mental injury? Because what if it's something really, gross or disgusting, and it really makes you emotionally upset over it? Those cases are very difficult to pursue. But the manufacturer, the seller of the food, if it does have a foreign object in it which is not natural, they will be subject to lawsuit. Because there's an implicit warranty. Food needs to be wholesome. It has to be healthy and safe to consume. And if they breach it, they're subject to lawsuit. I actually was involved in another one where I think it was something like 140 people got ill at this huge wedding reception because the food had salmonella, but it had something in it. And even though they probably didn't do it certainly intentionally, they had a really good reputation in the community. It was just, it was a bad day for them, and somehow something got through the system and contaminated the food, and they were liable. And many of the people, no one got very, very sick, but a couple of people stayed in the hospital for a couple of days. So no one individual got a ton of money, but overall it was a fairly big suit against the company. Luckily they had insurance. So sale or food or drink needs to be wholesome. That's straightforward. Patent or trademark, that's this thing related to infringement we already talked about. Secondhand and used goods, they're often implicitly sold with similar warranties, but not so much that warranty of fitness. There's a certain expectation called caveat emptor. What is caveat emptor? It's the old Latin term, let the buyer beware. At one time, that was the law for every transaction, and that's why you had to be more, you had to do what's called due diligence more when you were a buyer. If you bought something and it turned out to be defective, shame on you. That's usually the case when you buy used merchandise. Now, the warranty of fitness for general use, the warranty of fitness for particular use, those things tend to fall by the wayside For used goods, these implicit warranties usually relate to new goods. Not always, though. Like, say I bought a car from you, you had it for a year, and it had a 5-year express warranty. Under the United States federal law, the Moss-Magnuson Act, that warranty automatically goes to me. And I love that when people say, hey, I'm going to give you a transferable warranty, or the company's kind enough to give you the transferable warranty. Well, the law requires that if you have an express warranty for a certain period of time, it passes on to other purchasers of the good during that warranty period. We don't want manufacturers to be able to basically skate or walk away from obligations just simply because the goods have been sold down the road. It stays for the full 5 years, it transfers. It makes sense. It's fundamentally fair for consumers. Exclusion or surrender. Generally speaking, sellers can exclude warranties. And how do they do it? They literally say no warranties with the sale, or as is, where is, buyer to do due diligence. All those things make it perfectly clear to the buyer there's no overt promises, and they're waiving the implied ones. Now, sometimes the law won't let us even waive implied ones, and one of those areas is related to housing. You can't waive the, say you go to a house and it's like a real dump and the windows are broken and the heat's not working and there's no toilet. I don't know why I'd rent it, but say you're really desperate, rather have a roof overhead, nothing. There's something called the warranty of habitability with housing. You can't say, yeah, I'm okay with it. Could you now sue later? You're there for 2 months and you're kind of upset by, the draftiness, the coldness, and the lack of running water. Can you now sue for breaching something called the warranty of habitability? Yeah, you could, because the landlord and tenant can't waive those because human health and safety aren't too important. A related one, that's not so much for business law. Well, it could be. You might want to get into real estate. I always think of cars. Generally speaking, you can try to sell a car as is, where is, but if that car doesn't pass Massachusetts inspection and meet certain safety standards under called the Lemon Law in Mass, that's a breach of the law, even though you sold it as is. So the way around that, those of you that are curious, you're selling a car, it's got serious problems, and you don't want it to come back because it's got an engine light on or something like that. It's not going to pass mass inspection, or the brakes are shot, and you want to sell it really for parts. That's exactly what you say. You're parting it out. You're selling it for parts, and this car is not being sold for the purposes of being registered at this time, and let the buyer take that risk, because the lemon law is pretty strict. It's a difficult law to get around. So generally speaking, what's the rule about waiving warranties? The buyer and seller are free to waive warranties as long as it's not hidden somewhere in the fine print, as long as it's not done in a fraudulent, secretive sort of, devious way. Sellers are free to basically say this product is sold as is, where is, with no warranties, whatever. And the other thing that protects sellers too is sometimes you are selling a good and it does have a defect right on it. And I think some of the furniture stores have this nick and dent section in the store. My wife is much more into having things, really pristine. I could care less if it's got if the leather had a little tear on the side that no one's going to look at. That doesn't bother me. It bothers her. But say I went there and I see a tear on the side of the leather. He goes, yeah, this leather couch used to be $4,000. We're selling it for $2,500 because it's got this tear on the side that we stitched up. We don't think it looks that bad. What do you think? I buy it. Can I now sue because it's defective? No, because the defect was obvious. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Still applies for obvious defects when you buy something. It's like buying a car with a cracked windshield and you're driving it and you find out you can't get an inspection. Well, I should have a new window put in. No, you knew it was cracked when you bought it. You bought it with a known obvious defect. I think that's pretty straightforward. That's where the examination of the buyers at play. You should know the term caveat emptor because it's still an important concept. From time to time it comes up. That's the buyer bears all the risk, and therefore they should do their due diligence. They really should examine the good or product to make sure it's not defective. Privative contract is no longer important. It was important at one time. So if I buy a bicycle for my kid goes out and rides it and the pedal snaps off one day and they injure their ankle severely, can they sue the manufacturer because it breached the warranty of fitness for normal use? And therefore, you can not only sue for the broken bicycle, you can sue for the physical damages as product liability. Yeah, he can. Well, he didn't have a contract with, Fuji bicycles. I did. Well, some people say, well, it's all within the family. But what if it wasn't him? I bought it, and a week later, I sold it to my friend. I never really even wrote it once. Does the warranty of fitness for normal use pass to that second use against the original bicycle manufacturer and seller? Yeah, it does, because we don't want, as consumers, that the secondhand market should somehow limit actions for claims that are reasonable in time and scope. So just because you're not in privy of contract doesn't mean you can't sue. Like, think about it. What if I worked for a company and the company gives me a company car to use. They bought it from Ford Leasing or rented it from Ford Leasing. Let's bought it, make it better. They Acme company who I work for bought the car from Ford. I go out and use it, and it's got a um, defective steering column. I get in a serious accident. Can I sue Ford even though I don't have any privity of contract, meaning I'm not the contracting party with Ford? Does it still give me rights to sue under warranty? Yes, it does, because there's a reasonable expectation that when we buy goods, they might be for the benefit of a third party. And that third party, going back to, I think it's Chapter 13, third party contracts, they usually have the ability to sue for privity of contract. And that's the same with component parts. So Ford may not put in their own brakes. They may put in, Acme brakes within the Ford car. Now, can I sue Ford if the brakes are defective and I get hurt and I damage someone's property? Yeah, I can sue Ford, but can I also sue the component manufacturer, even though I had no specific contract with Acme brakes? That was all Ford. Yeah, I can. The component parts are also liable to the ultimate consumer of the goods. Warranty protection, that's the Moss-Magnuson Act. I think it's good for anything under $15. If they breach one of these warranties or an express warranty, they have the obligation to repair it in a reasonable period of time. And during that period of repair, the warranty gets extended for that period of time. And if they can't, after a reasonable number of attempts, try to repair your goods, they have the obligation to refund your money or give you a new one in the alternate. And that's I think, a very good law for the consumer. Bonaparte, nature and cause of harm, third persons. Don't forget, it's also personal injury. A lot of people think we're just going to sue over the broken thing or the thing that doesn't function. There could be huge ramifications. If I bought a car and had defective brakes, and I lose a limb from a serious accident, they're liable under breach of warranty for the personal injury. We always think it's a personal injury claim, but part of the sort of the language we're going to use in court is based upon warranty. Consumer protection, product safety, there's both federal and state agencies that want to make sure that consumers buy goods that are safe for use and for consumption at their food. The Food and Drug Administration also gets involved in this. I always think of my kids. I had something called the Super Soaker rocket. It's this big, long, inflatable 7-foot rocket, I don't know, maybe a foot in diameter, and it stood 7 feet tall. But on the bottom was like a 2-liter empty bottle of soda, and you filled it partially with water, but then you pumped it full of air, and then it was a release valve, and the rocket would shoot off the pad and go several hundred feet in the yard. And it was soft. The material on the outside was inflatable, like elastic, I don't know, latex or something. But down on the bottom were fins made out of neoprene rubber, very soft. But what was remarkable is because that thing shut off the pad so very, very fast, those little neon fins that were on the bottom that made it shoot straight fairly up, because of the speed and the trajectory of it went so quick, kids were getting cut on their face and their arms because the thing would go so fast, it would actually cut you, even though it was made out of a very soft and supple material. And so there was a product recall, and I remember because I bought it with a credit card, I got something from the Consumer Protection Agency contacting Toys R Us, and Toys R Us, I don't even think it exists anymore, but Toys R Us contacted us to either give us money back or we could get a little CD player instead. And I always tell my kids about that. He goes, "You're not going to make us give up the rocket." He goes, "No, but I think it's better that you guys set it off instead of me because you guys heal a lot quicker than I do." But I made sure they were safe and stood back when we did the thing. But think about it. Are there products that are sold sometimes out there? If you're into like politics or history, there's a guy named Ralph Nader who ran for president in the year that George Bush and Al Gore ran, George Bush the younger. And Ralph Nader was made famous as a consumer advocate. He's a lawyer, and he went out and wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed. And it was about a car made by Chevrolet called the Corvair, not the Corvette, the Corvair. And there was something about the way in which the frame was attached to the steering column or something like that. If you got in an accident, the steering column, I think, would act almost as like a joust into your chest. And it was like killing people at very, very modest rates of speed if an accident happened. And the title of the book was Unsafe at Any Speed. Think about it. Do we want a government agency out there to make sure the goods we're buying aren't going to cause us physical harm or damage to our property? Yeah, I don't want a blender to plug in and I turn it on and it sucks so much energy that it catches on fire and burns down my house. I want a government entity to make sure these products are recalled and we are protected as a result. And I think my kids have a Subaru, and one of their cars got recalled recently because I think an airbag issue. Yeah, I don't want airbags blowing up or inappropriately going off or shooting particles at my family or loved ones. None of us do. So the consumer protect. Now, what if you're the manufacturer of goods? Well, that's the fun side, right? That's the good side. What if you're the manufacturer of goods and you think you've done a good job and you think your product's safe and not defective? You have a right to a hearing, but we usually take the products off the shelf or at least freeze them for a period of time, and then you have a hearing and you either make adjustments or you prove to the government that the product is in fact safe and wholesome and appropriate. And that's what we have trials over. But it puts an incentive, though, if you're a manufacturer anyway, saying the government can shut me down and take away my product. I might as well make it as safe and appropriate as possible. And you're also avoiding lawsuits. Truth in lending, I don't know why it's in this chapter, but it is a consumer advocate issue. Whenever you borrow money to buy an item, a car, a house, refrigerator, you can buy things on credit everywhere, even relatively small things, phones. There may be interest rates charged. And we already talked about this previously. The usury rate of interest is that interest that's more than what the law allows. We don't want people getting gouged. I think they're still getting gouged if it's around 30%, but you get the point that we're going to set a cap and it's not going to go beyond that. But truth in lending not only mandates they can't charge a usury rate, they have to give you specific information about what your payments will be, how much interest you'll pay over the specific period of time and on each payment, whether or not you could prepay, meaning that I'm supposed to pay this over 3 years, but I came into some money because my mother died. Can I take that money and pay that off early and therefore avoid all those interest payments? They have to list all those rights and risks and obligations overtly for the consumer. That way you can do comparative shopping and say, I don't really want to get hooked into this loan because it's way too expensive. In fact, there's usually, when it comes to consumer credit, you're buying something on credit, usually they give you a 72-hour period of time to say, I changed my mind, I don't want to go forward. Truth in lending, very, very powerful tool to really know what you're getting into. In fact, I used to do real estate closings at one time, and that was one of the big jobs I had to do was, if I'm sitting with the buyer saying, yeah, you're buying a house for $200,000, but you're going to pay back a lot more than $200,000. And here's what you're going to pay. And here's the amortized rate. This is what the actual interest rate per year will be. This is how much interest you'll pay over time. This is how much of the loan is principal, or the payment goes to principal, how much goes to interest. And people should know that. And the government mandates that we do under truth in lending. And I think it's a disclosure law is really what it is. Fair credit reporting relates to that. You have a right to your credit report. There's 3 major credit reporting agencies. You have a right to look at that. You have a right to know what dings are on your credit report if you're any, like you failed to pay a bill, you're late on a bill, and you have a right to dispute it. And if you can contact the creditor and say there's an error, you can put what's called a dispute on your credit report to help clean up your credit report. But if you can prove that they falsely or just accidentally made a claim against your credit, they have to fix that for you or pay damages. Good law, not utilized as much as it should be, but it's a very good law. And the state has very similar consumer protection agencies as well to protect the consumer from getting ripped off. Fun chapter, a lot of stuff. I'm testing you just on that chapter. I'm sorry this video was so long, but it was just filled with a lot of important stuff. Be well, and hopefully I'll have another chapter very soon.